Hello everybody, welcome to my first non-video game related video. This is all about hardware. So a few days ago I got this great new computer that you will see in just a few seconds. It's an 8086 with 1 megabyte of RAM, a 40 megabyte hard disk. I posted an ad in my city's billboard website, whatever. And someone replied and said, hey, I have this super old computer. Do you want it? You can have it for like $40. And I said, what is it? And they sent me a few pictures and told me how old it was. And so I said, yes, I will take it. And so 2 days ago, I picked it up and here it is. This is the computer. It's pretty dirty and I wanted to see if all the buttons are working. So I tried the turbo button and the reset button, and the reset button got stuck, and that's pretty annoying because I had to solve that problem later, but that's how it is when you get old computers like this. The floppy levers and eject button seem to work normally, as did the power switch. And just listen to the sound of this switch. For me, this is what nostalgia sounds like, because my very first computer was pretty close to this model, and I think it even had exactly the same power supply with the same switch. In addition to the normal 15-pin connector, the VGA card also has a 9-pin connector, which was pretty new to me that this thing actually existed. And then I saw that the monitor actually had a 9-pin input connector, and you could switch it from TTL, which I assume is for EGA graphics, to analog, which is for VGA. And yeah, all the nice dials that you had on those old machines. The keyboard doesn't seem to be anything special, but at least it's a clicky keyboard and I love that. Yeah, together with the computer I got lots and lots of manuals, and one of them was the Microsoft MS-DOS 4.01 manual, which is also the version of DOS that is installed on the hard disk. You can even see someone highlighted some parts of the manual, which I think is pretty cool because it means someone really tried to understand the machine back in the day, and what people today just keep for granted was real work for them to understand, and it gives this machine just a bit more of personality, maybe, because I know how the person who used it had to use it, and yeah, maybe they didn't see a computer ever before, or never used one at least, and that's pretty cool. Someone even wrote down some notes in the manual. And do you remember DOS Shell? It's the kind of cheap Windows replacement that came shipped with older versions of MS-DOS. Or maybe not a replacement, but like, let's say, an application launcher. It was removed in DOS 6, I think. And yeah, there was a full manual for that thing. Someone left a handwritten BASIC program, which is interesting because some of the first programs I ever wrote, I wrote on a typewriter in my grandpa's house. Years before I got my first computer, so this is kind of the way I learned to program, and this person apparently did it too. Of course, they kept their program listing in completely the wrong book, because it would have been better suited to be kept in the GW Basic 4.01 manual that also came with this computer for GW Basic. And it's also the first dialect that I ever had contact with, but not the first one that I actually programmed in, because that was Microsoft Quick Basic, which is kind of the successor to GW Basic. One of the pages is a bit bigger than the other pages, which probably wouldn't pass quality control today anymore. Next, we have the manual for the floppy and hard disk controller, which, as usual for the time, and as you will see later, is an extension card. Apparently it's pretty hard to set up with all the jumpers and settings that you have to know. I mean, look at this manual. It's longer than the one I got for the last laptop computer I bought. Copyright 1989. I wasn't even in school when this was printed. This manual is for a Hercules monochrome graphics card. Sadly, the card isn't included in the stuff I got, but I had one of these in my very first computer, so I'll take it and never give it back. These cards had a higher resolution than VGA, but only black and white. They didn't even have gray. But they had one very useful feature, especially for game developers. Their memory was mapped into a different location, so they could be used in parallel with VGA. This way they could be used to show debugging information while showing the game on the main monitor. Here we have the manual for the VGA card that is actually in the computer. It explains all the switches, jumpers and connectors of this somewhat exotic looking card. I'll take a closer look someday in the future when I will try to understand all the parts of this machine, but this is nothing for today really. I even got the manual for the keyboard, even though the title says keys in German and not keyboard, but as you all know, all your basa belong to us. This is translated from Japanese and not very well translated, I must say. The main board doesn't even have parallel or serial ports, so they came on an expansion card too, and as you might have guessed, here's the manual for it. Once again, there's a lot to set up for this card to work. And then we have the manual for the monitor, which explains all the weird knobs and dials and connectors, and one day I may have to use it. The manual for the mainboard explains a lot of things and it's pretty detailed, but it failed to explain one connector, and that is the one for the external battery, and I had to guess and check with a multimeter to find out that this one is actually used for the battery connector. But I was very happy to see that it had one of these connectors because the battery leaked and I had to remove it, and this way I didn't have to solder in a new battery but could just plug it in. I also got 3 boxes of floppy disks, one box full of 5¼ inch floppies, including the operating system and some other software like a vocabulary trainer with files for Latin, French and English. Probably not very useful today, but a nice artifact of the past. Then there were 2 boxes full of 3½ inch floppy disks. Some were double density, which is the 720K variety, and some were high density, which is the 1.4 megabyte variety. Some of them were empty. Some of them had software like Word 5.5 or Excel. Yeah, I'm gonna have to try them all to see if they still work or if they don't. But for now, I'm just happy to have them, including the boxes, which are pretty cool. And I almost broke one of the boxes because those 2 separator cards were locked on the lid, but in the end, nothing bad happened, and now I have several boxes in nice condition. And then there was a full box of 5¼ inch floppies that wasn't even opened. It's still in shrink wrap. I don't even know how many floppies there are inside. The price tag is unreadable. I think this is pretty cool, and maybe I will open it one day, maybe I won't. So yeah. So I opened up the machine, I took a look at it, and you can see the hard disk and floppy controller, the VGA card and the I/O controller. You can also see how many connectors and jumpers there are, and most of them I have no idea what they do, but the manual will surely tell me one day. Yeah, it's an AMD CPU, not an Intel one, but they were manufactured under license from Intel. You can see those 2 BIOS chips on the right. That's because these are each 8-bit chips, and to feed the 16-bit data bus of the 286, they used 2 of them in parallel, which is a nice design, and I didn't know that that was actually a thing. When you buy a machine that is that old, you usually check the battery for the CMOS, and yeah, as I expected, it leaked and it corroded some of the traces on the mainboard. So I removed it and had to build a replacement for that. So I soldered a holder for a CR2032 battery onto some prototype board. Then I realized I should add a diode to my little board because the mainboard would try to charge the battery, and if I didn't add a diode, it might make the battery explode, and that's something I really didn't want to happen. So I found some old hardware and stole a diode from it. I added the wires, I added some tape to make sure I don't produce any short circuits. Then I reinstalled the VGA card, added the battery, and checked out the machine for the first time. And well, what can I say? It works! Next up was to remove all the hardware again and start cleaning the old computer. Yeah, this is also always some tedious work, but it's usually totally worth it. Part of the process is also to remove all the visible plastic parts and soak them in warm soap water for an hour or so, then brush them off with an old toothbrush and let them dry for a while. One of the most annoying parts is usually to clean the case from all the old dirt, and there are scratches that you can never get rid of, but at least WD-40 and some alcohol get rid of the most ugly stains. I used a tiny amount of WD-40 to repair the reset button, and that helped a lot. So let's take a short look at the hardware that is in this computer. Here's the I/O card, the VGA card, and the IDE controller card. Then we have the 5.25-inch floppy drive, the 3.5-inch floppy drive, and this fancy old hard drive. This is 40 megabytes, and I tried to come up with something that's about the size of this hard disk, but I think even the graphics memory on my phone is bigger than this huge hard disk. Of course, I also had to reassemble the whole machine. This took me like 40 minutes or so. You can see a time lapse of that right now. Yeah, after cleaning, it's much more fun to work with these parts because your fingers don't get dirty anymore, and you can see the system come together again, and you run some tests in between. You see if all is working, and it does, and then you're happy, and yeah, that's what happened. So overall, the machine is pretty cool, I think. And the next thing I'll have to do is to run some games on it and see how they work, because that's what those machines were meant to do. Am I right? Of course, you all want to see the machine boot, and not only see, but also hear it boot. So if you have some nice headphones, I suggest using them, because the sound this thing makes gives me such great retro vibes, and even the monitor has this high-pitched beep that gives you headaches after a while, but for a short while it's really enjoyable. So I'll boot the machine now and show you what it does and what it sounds like. So, thanks for watching, and see you next time. Bye!